Welcome to another video of Reboot 33 Explained Rationale. This one will be diving in depth into cold exposure. Yes, you heard that right, cold exposure. That is one thing that we are asking you for. One of the 6 that we're asking you to do over these next 33 days is roughly 2 minutes of cold exposure daily. This might be the one that you are the most resistant towards. That is at least what my prediction is that the most amount of people, in terms of which task will be avoided at all costs, it is likely going to be this one. And yet, the one task that probably has the greatest return on investment is probably this one. Cold exposure is super beneficial on multitude of fronts. It has an incredible impact on our nervous system activity, function, regulation. It is potent fuel for your body in terms of energy, mood, your immune system, recovery, blood flow, brain function. I mean, this is the real deal. For me personally, just a little backstory. I got kind of forced into cold exposure during a trip to Europe. In 2022, my family and I went to Ireland, and there wasn't any hot water at the showers at a place we were staying in West Ireland called Galway. No hot water, just cold water. And I noticed, I was like, I feel pretty energized other days. Like, I feel like a different kind of focus. I feel like lasered, locked in. And the only thing I've changed is the fact that my showers are cold because I have to have them be cold. I don't have an option. I went back to school that summer and also continued to notice a distinct difference between days I took cold showers and days where I didn't take cold showers. And I was like, maybe this is something I need to just commit to. And I did. And for the most part, I have been, I would say, legit, maybe 15, 20 days out of the past 3 years have not been exposed to cold at some point during the day. So pretty much almost every single day for 3 years now, I have put myself in cold exposure, and there's a distinct difference between days where I do and days where I don't. I notice that my energy is better, my thinking is clear. I notice that body just feels kind of primed and ready. I feel like quick twitchy, which for my line of career, you kind of need a little bit of that. I feel like everything fires correctly. I feel like I recover better. My body feels better. So there's a lot of benefits. I'm about to go in and explain some of those bigger ones when it comes to the nervous system and our overall health. So when it comes to cold exposure, there's really kind of three big pieces that this has a major influence on. The first one is our blood flow, circulation. Second one is our immune system. Third one are neurochemicals and hormones. There's also studies that show helps with like fat burning, called brown fat thermogenesis. There's also stuff going in on how it can improve digestion, vagus nerve tone, which a lot of those kind of filter more so into the blood circulation and neurochemicals, hormones. So I'm just going to go dive right in. For part number 1, circulation. What occurs in cold exposure when you get yourself in, I'm referring to, let's just say, a cold shower or a cold tub. Other options are like putting your hands in cold water in the sink, splashing cold water on your face, putting your feet in a bucket of ice, putting a pack of frozen peas on the back of your neck, jumping in a river during winter. There's a bunch of different options. What I'm kind of getting at is just the gist of what happens when we're cold, and then what is the response when we warm back up. So when we are cold, when we put our bodies into cold water, or ice, whatever the medium is, our body will, blood flow wise, will constrict the blood vessel, and an effort to divert blood and shunt it towards our organs, because we need to keep our organs at a fairly consistent temperature throughout the day. And so blood is what keeps it warm. So it's going to shunt blood away from pretty much everywhere else and basically direct it towards our organs. Now you might think, okay, well that doesn't really sound like a good thing. It also causes sympathetic is definitely a stressor. Being in the cold, it mimics a predator being right in front of us. And you might also think, okay, that doesn't make sense. But it is what happens in the aftermath that is super, super beneficial towards our organs, our body, and just overall quality of life. What happens after is we get a massive amount of dilation of our blood vessels. Like blood just starts pouring back through our extremities, arms, legs, head, even our organs too, just getting perfused with blood. And during that kind of like recirculation, dilation, a lot of bad nutrients, bad like chemical buildup will get flushed out. That wave will also bring in all the fresh, new, healthy nutrients and resources that all the different areas of our body needs. It'll bring all of that in a very quick and thorough fashion throughout our entire body. That process is, that is second to none. There's nothing else that really is able to do that. Maybe like breath work and sleep, but it's quick, it's powerful. You feel it. It clears up anything that's left over in your brain from a bad night's sleep, or maybe all the soreness from a workout. There's a reason why athletes are doing these ice baths all the time, and a lot of it is because it reduces inflammation due to it flushing out all these poor chemicals that might have built up in different areas that are just not getting proper blood flow to that region in that given time frame. So by doing cold exposure, you are significantly enhancing your circulation throughout your entire body, which has a ton of benefits. Blood is the medium that nutrients travel through. Blood is the medium that oxygen travels through. So you're going to be helping reoxygenate your cells. You're going to be helping stack up nutrients and vitamins to all your cells throughout your entire body just through the practice of cold exposure. That will also help increase function of our organs, nervous system, nerve activity to our organs, our brain, spinal cord, brain stem. Everything will get a boost. One piece of that being due to increased blood flow with that. So absorption, digestion, you might have a bowel movement right after it, just kind of help clear out your system. Stuff's just going to start working more efficiently and more effectively, which in the end game, that's kind of what we're all pursuing when it comes to forming better healthy habits. Is we just want stuff to continue to work well for as long as possible while we live. Cold exposure is a great way for that. One reason why is the circulation for our bloodstream, and a big piece is for our brain too. Blood flow to the brain. Our brain requires a constant supply of oxygen. So if there's anything that's interfering with the ability for our blood to adequately perfuse our brain, then cold exposure is a great way to reopen the floodgates, if you will. Second piece, number 2, is our immune system. Our immune system gets a huge boost from cold exposure. When people take cold exposure, they then have an increase of white blood cells right after. And part of that is because it's really stimulating the parasympathetic nervous system, or vagus nerve, primarily like that aftermath. So in the moment of cold water, our body is actually stressed, which is going to lead to vasoconstriction, higher blood pressure. Some more of those stress hormones, cortisol will get released, norepinephrine will get released. But in the aftermath, we get a huge uptick of parasympathetic activity, far greater than what the sympathetic activity was. And the main nerve that dominates that parasympathetic space is called our vagus nerve. Our vagus nerve is also responsible for white blood cell creation, stimulation, and also it regulates the organs that deal with that. So like our spleen, our thymus, and also in our bone marrow, those are the areas where white blood cells get created. It's going to help stimulate the generation of those, making new ones, almost like white stem cells, white blood stem cells, kind of, if you will. So we get a super big uptick in immune system function, not just of creating white blood cells, but also of just re-up-regulating all of the guard keepers that are going throughout our bodies. They're called like macrophages, monocytes. We have this whole slew of like white blood cell different types that are going throughout our body that are looking for bad guys to tag, flag, and start creating antibodies for, and then also start clearing them up. Even bad cells that are us, the machinery of the cells themselves. When we get cold exposure, we get this big, huge uptick in inflammation or in our immune system. Then it's going to also help flush out a lot of the bad cells that are accumulating in our body potentially that we really don't want. Bad cells in our body typically end up creating inflammation and can potentially lead to disease, can also potentially lead us down the road towards cancerous type outcomes. But cold exposure has a great influence on the immune system. One of the best videos I've seen for a lot of the like neuroimmunologic benefits of this is from a doctor called Andrew Huberman. He has a super in-depth video for cold exposure, especially as it relates to the immune system. Now, number 3, this is the kind of really the big one, is our hormones and our neurochemicals, specifically epinephrine, norepinephrine, and dopamine. These are primarily a lot of our energy sources. So when we're feeling motivated, when we're feeling willpower, when we are feeling energized throughout the day, we get a decent dose of this from coffee. A decent uptake. We drink coffee. Coffee will stimulate our adrenals to release epinephrine, norepinephrine as well, and that's when we get that little bit of a boost of energy. Unfortunately, it will also release a lot of cortisol, and then we get the big crash afterwards, halfway through the afternoon. Cold showers give us a 250 times bigger kick than of norepinephrine, epinephrine, and dopamine versus coffee. And those levels are continuing to increase at up to 4 hours after cold exposure, whereas 4 hours after coffee exposures when that big drop occurs. So you literally have this going on. They're both going. This is tough. They're both going, and then one, and the other keeps going up. That was cold exposure, one that's going up. And dopamine's a big one for that. 250 times more dopamine. I mean, that's your energy, that's your mood. Typically, dopamine is that and serotonin are the big kind of mood, endorphin type molecules that we enjoy feeling. The feelings of joy, happy, gosh, this feels good, I want more of this. We get a huge natural uptake, release of that upon cold exposure. So hormonally, neurochemically, those are huge drivers. So for me, if I'm recommending cold exposure to someone as something to try out, why might I recommend that? For example, having someone who struggles with brain fog, anxiousness, or reactivity, someone who is super emotional, emotionally dysregulated, whether that's they get angry or irritable quickly, someone who has troubles with digestion, feeling bloated all the time, someone who struggles with palpitations, someone who struggles with high blood pressure, neck, body ache issues, someone who struggles with, for the most part, I would encourage it for just about everybody, unless you're got some kind of thermal sensitivity or insufficiency that you can't that your body will shut down if you get a pack of ice on you or something. So with that, there's a lot of symptoms. Dysautonomia would be a huge recommendation for cold exposure. Autoimmune too, because of the immune system benefits. Nerve health also gets a big boost. So people who have like numbness and tingling, it helps stimulate neuronal growth, and kind of repair. So a lot of the stuff that I see in clinic, by the time we kind of get to that first reeval, I'm like, okay, let's start baking in some new things. Have you ever thought about cold exposure? And one of the first things that they'll be like is like, oh my goodness, no, I'm not doing that. I'm like, well, let's try it out. One of the last pieces is that just the kind of mental fortitude and the willpower is you're willingly putting yourself in something that you don't want to do, and you're willingly putting yourself through something that your body like primitively wants to get out of as soon as you're in it. And the longer that you are in it, especially staying comfortable, like staying cognitively slow and comfortable, will pay off in terms of like real world experience and translation, where when we're in stressful situations throughout the day, throughout the week, month, life, you won't be as reactive as you might have been before. You might have a little bit more thorough thinking process, a little more of a calmer thinking process, and cold exposure helps train that. It helps get you out of the stress emotion response center of brain in the middle here called our amygdala. It helps kind of redirect activity towards our prefrontal cortex here, which deals with more like executive thinking, objective decision making, rational decision making, whereas in here is way more irrational, way more reactive, way more emotional type thinking behaviors. So neurologically speaking, from a brain perspective and a behavioral perspective, this is probably, I think, it is more than likely the best regulator we possibly could leverage in terms of our nervous system. So if you looked at our ebook, you looked at the challenge, and you saw 2 minutes of cold exposure, and you were all like, oh my goodness, there's no way I will ever do this. Let's rethink it. And if that is something that you're super adverse to, how about we just slowly taper it up? Okay, so we slowly go for like maybe 10 seconds, 15 seconds at the end of your shower, just tiny little piece, boom. 2 weeks later, we're taking it up to 20, 25 seconds. Cool. And just every 2 weeks, try to stay in for like 2 more breaths, 2 more really long breaths. Off. Just like that. Just 2 long breaths, tack on 2 longer breaths on the week. And eventually, who knows, maybe in a year you might be at doing the entire shower cold, like myself. So that's what I got on cold exposure. That's just stuff off the top that I had fresh and ready. And part of the reasoning of why we had it be a piece of Reboot 33, probably one of the most impactful instrumental pieces that you can incorporate into your lifestyle is this cold exposure.